biggest pieces of advice as a synth guy is make sure to record yourself. You gotta record yourself. If you're operating a hardware modular, plug in a cheap hard disk recorder or plug it into your computer and just record what you do. You'll thank me later, no matter how underwater robot fart your original patches may be. You'll find it interesting to go back and listen to them. And if you're a person like me who buys and later sells synths in your collection, it'll be nice later to have a record of the sounds of the synths you owned and now no longer own, sort of like a nostalgic Facebook photo from 7 years ago to listen to. And I can't recommend it enough. I've been recording music since the 90s when you had to pay to go to a 16-track studio, and I try to keep archived logs and MP3s of all my old junk and listen back to it. And it's very rewarding, at least for me. So I highly recommend recording yourself. Of course, with a modular, if you record the output, you can also load the weird sounds into your DAW or into your sampler and use them as a source material. But yeah, it certainly can't hurt, and tape is cheaper than ever, or digital storage is cheap as chips, so just record yourself. That's my first motto for the day. But anyway, let's dive in here. You don't want to listen to my music all day. Let's dive in and do some modular stuff. Okay, so I have a plan for this one too, like I often do. So let me walk you through it. First of all, let's drop in. I'm thinking of making a template, so I don't always start by making an output and then making a mixer. But I kind of don't want to get into the habit of using a template because it'll start me from, the more default modules I have in the template, the more repetitive I'm worried I will become. So, I know I'm going to use a clock generator in out today, but it might be better just to keep on forcing myself to make them in the hopes that someday I'll make something else. Today we're going to be using the clocked pattern generator. I think 5 will be a good starting number. And I'm going to just increment these a bit here. The clocked pattern generator in the Nord Micromodular is a funny one. It isn't a module that exactly would exist in Eurorack. For example, it's not Pamela's Workout, and it's not programmable. You can't tell it what patterns to have. It has a massive amount, like, I don't know, what's the max here? So it has 127 patterns, and within each, and then there's like 127 banks, so, over 10,000 different patterns. It does have a step indicator here, so you can choose the length. But even in the manual, it doesn't tell you what those patterns are. And then it gives you this button called Delta Low, which basically means like less variety. I can never remember whether low means less variety or more variety, but I'm pretty sure it means less. So, you could sit down and I'm sure I could write down in musical notation what pattern 1-1 is and what 1-2 is, and then consult back, but it would be boring and I don't want to, so I'm not going to. Let's look at oscillators. Today we're going to be using this guy. So I made 5 pattern generators and 5 sine wave oscillators. Sine wave has kind of a reputation of being a bit boring, mainly because you can't filter it. Usually the sawtooth, the square, the triangle wave, all those waves have overtones, and you can use a filter to filter out some of those overtones. But a sine wave doesn't have any overtones. It's just a fundamental. It's just a single note. But there is something you can do with it, which is you can wrap that wave. You can, it sort of is what it sounds like. If the sine wave normally, well, it wouldn't be a straight line, but it'd be a smooth curve like this here, like the letter S on the side. And as you wrap it, you sort of force it to squish down and repeat itself, the number of S's that you would have in a particular shape. So these look like straight lines. With our sine wave, they're actually squishing the letter S. So you'd have two horizontal S's in the space that one used to be in. So let's hook them up here. Oh, I've tragically forgotten something, which is envelopes. That was poor of me. I'm just using the control drag function here to create more. I don't think it really matters whether the wave wrapper goes before or after the envelope, so I'm not going to overthink it here. And in some ways, this is going to be similar to a previous patch where rather than programming sequencers to tell the oscillators what to do, I'm going to let each oscillator be tuned to a note, and his job is to, play that note and be that note in the scale. And when he gets triggered, he will, I guess you could say it's almost like a random arpeggio. In an arpeggio, you hold down 4 notes on the keyboard, and it should, cycle through the 4 of them, usually in a repeating pattern. Here, the pattern will, of course, be determined by the pattern generators, which are now going to hook up to the gates in the envelopes. So you can tell here we're going to have 5 different voices. In a moment, the sine waves will all be tuned to different notes, and the this is going to make it a little more difficult than usual. And then we're going to adjust the wave wrapper for each one. I guess that means we will need some randomness. I think this is the way I want to do it, but since I still have lots of processing power left, let's just do this as well. Clocked random step gen. I don't know which will sound better, to have these being clocked to the tempo and adjusting the wave wrapper, or just having smoothness. I'll probably end up using all of one or all of the other, but I don't need them right at the beginning, so it's not the end of the world. So let's do some tuning on these guys. They've got different ways of arranging this here. Here it's in octave mode, and I'm going to put this guy 3 semitones up. I'm going to spread this chord out a bit more. So this one is going to be 10 up. That's the flat 7th. This one, oops, I clicked completely the wrong knob. This is partials. Again, these are primarily designed for doing FM, which we are not doing right now. These are just actual sine waves doing sine wave jobs. And so there's the octave, and let's go up another 5th. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, they did say 5th here. Oh, shoot. Whenever you see it go red and I didn't plan it to, that's got to be bad. So this says the 5th above. Well, we'll find out in a second if I'm wrong or not. And maybe this guy, let's just drop this guy down an octave, because that can never hurt. We need to plug these bad boys into the wave wrappers. Oops, that's not where it goes. It goes into there. Notice that if I get something wrong, I click here. There's one little black thing on the patch cable, and then it changes to a plugged patch cable when it's ready to be plugged. I let go, and it's in. But if I want to move him, I double-click him, and now you can see there's 2 black lines, which means you're going to remove me from my current port and move him to here. You can see he's plugged again, and he's plugged in. It's a good little system. It's not the most, it's kind of, out of date by, see, I plugged this one wrong and it turned gray. I don't need the AM input, I need the audio output. It does look a little bit 90s and dated, but I'm so used to it. If it isn't immediately clear, the color scheme, not the wires, but the modules themselves, to me look very clearly patterned after the dope for Eurorack modules, except they're, rotated 90 degrees so that they're horizontal instead of vertical, because that fits better on a computer screen. So right, we got everything going now here. Let's hook up the clocks. Just before I start, I just want to point out, so these guys are all set to pattern 1, and then bank 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now that I think about it, I shouldn't have done it that way. I should have, okay, fine, I can still fix this. Let's set the bank to number 1. Let's set the patterns to 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Because again, I have no idea what the designer put in here, but we're just going to explore and listen to what the different patterns give us. We're also probably going to experiment with the step numbers here, and maybe with the mono and the delta buttons. Again, if delta means that the output is not so frequent, then I forget what mono means. We could go look it up. Why don't we just look it up? Where's the manual? That can't hurt. Instead of me just randomly speculating and trusting my old man memory, I can find out what the manual has to say. Okay, module reference, and it is considered is it an LFO? Well, we'll find out. Yeah, it is. Pattern gen. Let's read. So, mono synchronizes modules in polyphonic patches to each other. It means if you play a chord, the module will control all voices in sync. Okay, that makes sense. And delta. Click to select high or low. High delta value produces great difference in output level between steps, whereas low delta produces low difference. The default setting is high. So, I still kind of don't know what that means. Output level between steps, because I thought it would be like how far away the steps are between each other. But I guess it doesn't matter too much. I should do a poll. I would love to see. I know people are programming at home on their own systems, but I wonder who out there is using micromodular or modular, and who is using VCV rack, or who is using Euro, or who is using some other system. I gotta assume VCV is the big boy. Okay, we should be. Oh, here we go. Volume up. Wow, instantly pretty. You like that? So again, we're playing the notes of a chord divided up into 5. And the patterns here are not changing. So look what happens if I start feeding some randomness. I'm going to slow this randomness way down, but it's still random to the pattern inputs. Listen closely. So instantly we're into polyrhythm territory. I only fed randomness to 2 of the patterns. 3 of them remained the way they were, but it sure made things weird awful fast. Let's just undo one of that. And undo again. That's us back to our original pattern. I think they're both cool. I think I like varying them up a bit. Let's try this one. like how just one of them being randomized makes the whole pattern unpredictable and odd. And I made both sets of randomness, but I have a feeling this is going to sound cooler. So I'm going to start by hooking up the wave wrappers. Now the sine waves are all real pretty by themselves. The wave wrapper should make them uglier, but in a good way, if you know what I mean. Now these haven't been opened even slightly yet, so they're not being affected, but here we go. Yeah, baby. Sounding awesome. That's really cool. I think this probably won't sound good, but let's do it just for fun. I'm sending each oscillator to be the FM input of another, which will probably wreck our musical tonality, but it might sound cool, so. There it goes. FM is a really powerful tool. I haven't even gotten into it in these streams at all. But it's hard to get musical results at the beginning, although if you work on it, you will eventually get there. So that sounds so cool to me. I'm going to put all these guys in the morph group. So there's morph group 1, knob 1. So he was at 18, I dragged him back to 0. I held down the control button to turn him red, and then I dialed him back up to 18. Gonna repeat that with the other ones. This is definitely something, and if you don't have a micromodular, you probably can't really imitate. So again, we're back to the pretty sine wave version, and let's dial the knob. I started it, I forgot to do this, but hope that won't ruin anyone's vibe if I dial down the tempo slightly. Back to no randomness. So there isn't really an amount input here. I could make a mixer and then put the mixer's amount knob under the control of a knob group. But here's another way to do it. I think I'm just going to assign knob number 2 here. And I'm going to dial him into the bank number in each of the pattern gens. So let's just hear how that sounds. So I've got a huge amount of variety under control of this green knob now. But when I leave it in place, it doesn't change because nothing random is being fed to the patterns. They're still stuck somewhere. I don't know which pattern they're on. Like this one goes from 1 to 13, and the knob is a little past halfway, so maybe he's on 7. It doesn't really matter to me. But at least the knob gives me that control. Not that you want to listen to me singing, but that is the original pattern we had. Let's move real slow. There we go. Now it's playing. Definitely different. So combine that with this guy. And you got all kinds of wackiness. What could we put under the third knob to make it interesting? I was thinking just the wrap knob itself. Like the amount is being assigned in various levels here. But if we put him under it, we could do weird things too. Was one more thing I was going to do in this patch, I think, and now I can't remember what it was. Let me just check my note to myself. No, there's nothing there. I guess you could also assign these random guys to these guys and then adjust that knob with the third knob as well. Oh, the other thing I was going to do was the FMing, and we'll have to get back into that more at a later date. So yeah, 5 pretty little notes. I'm still only at 62%. I could add a couple more even if I wanted to. And I've got this. Today we've actually kind of learned 2 things at once, or explored 2 things. One is the patterns. This one is very thin. I like it. I've got it. Back to our normal sound again. The other thing we learned today was wave wrapping. The one other thing I was going to do was this. Just the step buttons. Since we're back at I'm counting this as 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's where I hear it. Let's see what happens when we lengthen the steps just slightly. Again, it doesn't take much variation. Let's undo it again. Oh, I've kicked the there's no reset, so I've kicked the sequence out of phases itself. I may not get it back again. Maybe I should have originally had this guy doing reset if I really wanted the patterns to stay where they are. Oops, come back here. And then let's try that again. Okay, well that's how it is when it's synced up. We may never get that first pattern back again. Too bad. It's because the pattern generators had their clocks plugged in at slightly different times, so the pattern I was singing along with has now changed. But we can still dial the green knob to get other weirdness. But that's the key here. Not only is will changing just 2 out of the 5 patterns make the whole thing feel like it's suddenly gone random, but also adjusting the step length for the patterns will have the same effect. So I remember talking to I've forgotten his name. Starts with a J. The guy who sent me the most recent community patch, and he was talking about making multiple clocks, which I had done as well. But if you really want things to get out of time with each other, you don't need two different clocks. You just need two different amounts of steps. So let's try with just one. It's hard because we can't go back to that original pattern again. Too bad. Okay, let's adjust this one by one step. Two steps. It's hard to hear that one, but it might depend if you adjust the root notes number of steps, since we tend to hear those as like a kick drum. Sounds so good. I was going to say the wave wrapper sounds extremely digital and sort of sharp here. Not in the musical sense of sharp, but I mean like cutting. I was going to say, I might have mentioned this before, you can do wave wrapping on a Eurorack modular. You can do it in VCV using something that might be called a wave folder instead of a wave wrapper. But the Arturia Micro Brutes also had this option. So they gave you a sine wave and then they let you wrap it. A triangle wave, which is very similar to a sine wave, will also work very well with that function. But I think that's going to be this for this patch. I had a name in mind. I was looking at the IntelliGel Rainmaker, and building that tube modular really makes my brain think about modules all day. So this guy, instead of being called Rainmaker, is going to be called Rainfall. Because he sounds like little digital notes falling. So that's a good one. I like that. Even in this current, we lost that original pattern, but with a little bit of red knob up, I'm going to leave these steps away from 16 and repetitiveness just because I like the variety. Yeah. Oh, we forgot to experiment with this. Let's give him a few less notes overall. Just makes the whole pattern less busy. To my ears, that's even better. Yeah. Good stuff. Thank you, Rainfall. So that is what I wanted to do with that. Let's save him in his final version in there. 2 out of the 3 knobs ended up getting used. I'm not going to force myself to use all of them every time. I don't care that much. You could probably also do interesting things with the attack and the decay if you wanted to. But yeah, that's it for this patch. Thank you for tuning in. Much more coming up. I'm going to keep trying to do a video a day, every day, if I can get one up. So, thank you for tuning in. Woo out.